Hey guys, it's Lady Ambrosia. I hope all of you are doing well. I'm super excited because I have a special guest today, Lailoken. He has his own channel here on YouTube, Hellbound Heathen, and he is going to be my Gardenarian guest for my project that I'm putting together. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay, hello everybody. My name's Lailoken. I have a channel called Hellbound Heathen. There's going to be a link to the description down below, but I don't really go over, how-tos or Wicca 101s. I really just kind of debunk a lot of the bullshit that's out there on YouTube. But I do have some series, like I have a Wicca 2.0 series that is kind of like a little bit for a little more advanced people who kind of have bitten into a lot of occult, witchcraft, pagan material and feel like they kind of need to grow a little further into it and explore it.
Yeah, and he has a great channel, so check it out. Check it out, because he does really fun live shows too, and it's a blast.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I do a Wednesday show for my Patreons only, and then I have a Saturday show, which is kind of open, and Lady Ambrosia's been on it and other people. And then we just sort of talk back and forth about whatever's kind of going on in the news, and it's fun.
So let's get right into it.
Okay.
With the questions.
All right. So do you want, it looks like you're focused right now. Do you want me to be focused when I talk?
I think it's going back and forth, isn't it?
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, I'm watching the live chat and it's going back and forth between us. I think I have that mastered. Whereas before it was like totally stuck on me, but like I've evolved my live stream game.
Okay. Okay. So it's just on our end then. Okay. Okay. I got you.
Yeah, because even on my end on the computer, it's going back and forth.
Yeah, so it's probably, don't worry about it. It's probably me, because I think because I'm a guest on your show and I'm used to actually being the person on doing the show. So I understand. I got you.
Okay.
So
I promise it's going back and forth. I promise. I'm watching the live stream right now.
All right. Okay.
So let's get right into it. So how would you define, right? Like, because I think it's important to define things. So if you were going to tell people, if you were going to put it into a definition, what would that look like?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so like I said earlier, what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of define the tradition, and then I'll actually kind of define my own path. So the Gardenarian path is definitely a group practice. Like, it's very difficult for people to be solitary Gardenarians. Gardenarians it's coven based. It's you work with a group of people, and the best thing to, how would I define it? It's very geared towards connecting with the universe, I guess is the best way to describe it. It's definitely a fertility-based cult. It's also a mystery tradition, meaning that as you get into it and you study it deeper, you find out more and more things about yourself, about the universe, and it's very much just open into exploring all of that. And it's based upon, the traditional wheel of the year, where you have the 4 major Sabbats, especially the Wiccan wheel of the year, and then the 4 lesser Sabbats, the 2 equinoxes and the 2 solstices. But each one of those quarter points, the Samhain, Imbolc, Beltane, Lughnasadh, those are all based on the cycles of nature. And so one of the things that a lot of Wiccans do, and also Gardenarians, is we celebrate those various passages of the seasons. And they also represent passages of time within ourselves, and also time periods of, you could look at it as a day, as a month, as a year, and also the entire cycle of one's life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I would describe it.
So what do you feel like called you to walk this specific tradition?
Mm-hmm. Well, when I was young, when I was about 13, 14 years old, I really got into like spirituality, like wondering what God was, and looking at the universe and exploring and just kind of like thinking about everything, you know. And I used to cut school and go to the library and read books. And, you know, I came across some books on mythology. I came across a book on Celtic mythology. And I remember reading about the goddess Bridget, which is from the Irish pantheon. And something just ignited inside of me. And one of the names for Bridget is the fiery arrow, or Brio Saget. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but it's that piercing flame of poetry that enters you, and it's just kind of like it's an inspiration. And from that moment, I just got really inspired by that, and I got interested in the Druids. And I'm also very grounded, and I like to base my stuff in actual stuff. I don't like to make up a whole bunch of stuff. So I really wanted to find out about the Druids, but there's not that much information about them. They were pretty much just an oral tradition, and, you know, they really didn't write much stuff down. Whatever did get written down probably got destroyed or decomposed or whatever over time. And a lot of the oral traditions probably passed down to us, maybe as folk tales, maybe not, you know, it's hard to tell. So I got into studying witchcraft, and this was back in the 80s, and there weren't as many traditions as there are now. I mean, now there's like, you know, there's all kinds of traditions out there. Back then, there weren't that many traditions. And so I got interested in Wicca and learning about Wicca. And I started studying the Witch's Bible, which is by Janet and Stuart Farrar. And I started reading it, and I said, "Hey, this is a way that I can celebrate the passages of time and the god and the goddess," and it was exactly what I was looking for, and I've been studying it ever since.
So when you say earlier, when you were talking about how it's very much kind of a group social path, do you feel like in order to participate in that, you would need to be part of something? And if so, like if anyone's watching or whenever they watch this, if they feel like this is their path, like how could they look to join groups?
Yeah. So the reason why I say it's a group practice is because without going into too much details, I mean, people can find out information on their own. They can research it, but you need at least a couple to practice traditional British Wicca, which Gardenarian is definitely a part of. And so you need at least 2 people, and preferably at least 3 people, really, and then up to at least 13 people. But it involves other people. It's very difficult to practice on your own. Like I have my own personal practice, but to actually practice in a British traditional Wicca or Gardenarian path, you definitely need at least 2 people, 3 people, you know, and so that's why it's a group practice. It's very difficult to practice traditional British Wicca by yourself. I mean, you can do it, but it's difficult.
Sure. Well, and you know, and there's no judgment. I mean, and not to make this seem like it's child's play by no means, but there's games where you have to have at least 4 players. Okay.
Right.
So I get it. No judgment. So what resources, okay, if people are looking to kind of learn more about what we're getting ready to talk about, is there authors, books, YouTube bloggers, you know, where would you send someone who's like, oh, I really want to look into this?
Well, it comes back down to this one book again, the Janet and Stuart Farrar's Witch's Bible Complete, which is actually 2 books of theirs, the Witch's Way and the 8 Sabbaths for Witches. But this gives you a very good understanding of what the tradition is. But if you really want to find out more about it, I would suggest doing a Google search for maybe Gardenarians. Go to witchvox.com. Find out who in your area studies or teaches or offers classes on Alexandrian or Gardenarian or British traditional Wicca. Usually they'll call it British traditional Wicca or BTW. You know, find out about it first. Find out how they practice, what they believe, and see if it resonates with you. I mean, obviously, if it doesn't resonate with you, there's no point in exploring it, you know. But if it does resonate with you, definitely find out more. People can contact me. I'm very open to it. I can help people to, you know, find resources in their area. But again, the best thing to do is go to witchvox.com and, you know, look for groups in your area that are open. And if you do find somebody who claims to practice Gardenarian, there's nothing wrong with asking them, you know, are they legitimate, or, you know, do they have a lineage? There's another website called amberandjet.com where people can, like, let's say there's somebody like Lailoken. He's teaching a Wicca 101 class and claims to be a third degree high priest in Gardenarian, and he's teaching the class. Is he legitimate? You know, they have records. They know if you are or not, or if you've, you know, or if you actually are high enough of a degree to be practicing Wicca. Because there's a lot of people out there who claim initiation, claim tradition, and they're not really a part of it. And so you want to make sure that whoever you're training under is actually qualified to be training people. So, yeah, that's the best way to find out more information about it.
So you said that website is called Amber and Jet?
Yeah, it's Amber and Jet, amberandjet.com, I think. Yeah, so it's AMBER, I think ANDJET, amberandjet.com. And then the other one was witchvox.com, which is WITCHVOX.com.
Yeah, I know that I've hopped on Witchvox before, because I remember I was looking to just kind of see what was in my local community, which I live in Indiana, and there's a lot of Gardenarian groups in my area, actually. Yeah. Yeah, if you look up Indianapolis, Indiana on Witchvox, I think there was like 7, which in comparison to the rest of the pagan community, it's significantly higher. Like 7 doesn't sound like a big number, but when there's only maybe 13 publicly practicing groups, that's like over half. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and one thing that just reminded me of something. If you are interested in finding a group, and this applies to any group, meet them in a public place like a cafe or a bookstore or something, and get to know them. Ask them, like, do you guys practice skyclad? Which means, like, do they practice in the nude, or do they practice with clothes, street clothes on? Ask them, what are the requirements for initiation? You know, ask them various things, anything you might have questions about. And if they seem to be kind of dodgy about certain questions, that's going to be a red flag. If they're a really legitimate group, they'll say, you know, we practice this way. They might leave out especially certain details about an initiation, but you know, it's just kind of find out about that group. And also, a really good group is going to spend at least, like you've heard this traditional year and a day thing, traditionally they would spend at least a full cycle of the wheel of the year. So you would go with them and practice all the Sabbats, and then, you know, 1 extra day, but that 1 extra day could turn out to be like a couple of days or a week or whatever. But it gives you that time to be with that group and find out if it's going to work out for you, for both of you. If you feel comfortable with them, if they feel comfortable with you, before you actually commit, become initiated, and actually become a part of that group. It takes a little bit of time, so just be ready for that. Any decent group is going to take that time. Anybody who rushes in and says, hey, let's get you initiated tomorrow, that's a big red flag. So they might be really wanting to get you in there, but hold back.
Yeah, I I myself am not Gardenarian, but I feel like the year and a day process, really for any magical group or something along those lines, my dogs are going crazy, is so beneficiary just because it gives you time to get to know that person. And especially if you're going to be, you know, sharing such an intimate part of your life with them, you really want to really feel like you know them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm with that. Definitely.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, and that really applies to any group, you know, even if you're just going to be working in street clothes and maybe like, you know, because I've been in some really like eclectic groups where like, you know, random people sort of they do the Sabbat, like, you know, one person will do Samhain, another person will do Imbolc, and you know, just kind of like rotate it and you know, sort of free flow. There's nothing wrong with that, but even that kind of a setting, you still want to find out what kind of personalities you're working with. If somebody's on a power trip, you know, that's a big thing to be aware of. If somebody seems to be like on a power trip, like they have all the answers and, you know, it's their way of the highway. It's like, take the highway, you know, it's not worth it.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's a big thing too, because like I know that and I'm sure this applies to Gardenarian too, but there's certain groups that are, you know, 18 and over, 21 and over. So I think it's good to really know what you're getting yourself into, because it like would be really unfortunate if you got yourself into a situation where everyone's sky clad and you had no idea this was. You know?
That's why you ask those questions before. That's why you go through the process to get to know what the group does, what they practice, and find out more. And really a good Gardenarian group is going to be open about that. Probably like the first day you go and you meet somebody about possibly joining a group, they're going to tell you up front, we practice skyclad. Are you comfortable with that? No, I'm not. Okay, well, thanks. You know, good luck. Maybe, you know, maybe they'll turn you on to somebody else who does practice, you know, not skyclad, sort of like a British traditional Wicca path. But most of them are going to be upfront and honest about it. And you also brought up another good point about 18 and over. Because a lot of groups do practice skyclad, and also just for maturity's sake, most covens will not initiate anyone who's under the age of 18. And there's several good reasons for it. One is because, first of all, when you're over the age of 18, you're a little more serious, you're a little more grounded, you're not sort of into playing around. And also, in case they do practice skyclad, you know, you're 18 and over, you can make decisions on your own.
Yeah, definitely. I've even seen some that are 21 and over.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know about Gardenarian, but I know there are some groups that practice public rituals. Like there's a pagan pride at our pagan pride. There's a group. It's like Black Oak something, I think. I forget their group's name, but they will have public rituals, but like just open to the community. They usually do them at parks and stuff. But in order to actually go to like their groups, you need to be like 21 and over to go to like their closed groups. And they let people come to those to witness them who aren't in their coven, but just to like be publicly there and see and stuff. But like you can't be practicing with them unless you're initiated into their group.
Yeah, well, there's probably because the alcohol is involved. Like a lot of times they have red wine, and so probably that's why it's 21 and over. I've practiced in covens where it was non-alcoholic. They just use grape juice or fruit juice or whatever. And so those, you wouldn't have to be 21 and over. But yeah, if they're going to be serving wine, which is part of a lot of different pagan ceremonies, yeah, you'd probably want to be 21 and over, so they don't get in trouble.
Right. Well, and so much of it, I think, too, is just legalities. You know, you don't want to have little kids with a bunch of naked adults. Like, that could spell trouble.
Yeah, definitely.
So overall, how would you say, you know, of course, in your experience, how would you say the community is in this tradition?
I think the tradition around Gardenarian is like any other group. You're going to have personalities. You're going to have personalities that you resonate with, and you're going to have personalities who, you just don't resonate with. There's it's like any other community. As you get further into it and you spend more time around it, you find out all the little gossip that goes on, and all the little water cooler talk, and all the various drama that happens in any other group. So that happens, but for the most part, I would say that especially the Gardenarians that I have met have been very warm, very open, and very grounded in knowledge. They're very experienced. They're usually parts of other groups. They're very much interested in the lore of how Gardenarian has evolved and developed, because it has. It's really evolved and developed since 1939, when Gardner claims to have been initiated into the New Forest Coven, which is over in England. It's evolved. Some people don't like to admit it, but it has. It has evolved. And so it's good to know the roots. It's good to know where it comes from. It's like, if you can imagine, like if you're going to build a really tall building, you're going to want to have a good foundation. Same thing with a tree. If you have a tree with really deep roots, very strong roots, it's going to survive storms. And so it's very important to know the history, know the lore, and know it honestly. Don't try to doctor it up and make stuff up and dismiss that and try to, hide stuff. Be honest about where it comes from. So that's one of the things that I appreciate about the local community that I'm involved in. I don't think you're going to find too many Gardenarians online who are going to be very open about talking about stuff. I'm probably one of the rare ones. But for the most part, I would say that they're probably just like any other pagan groups. They're open to people, They're open to sharing knowledge, and they're usually very warm, witty, very funny, and nice, good people.
Why do you think it is that a lot of them tend to kind of keep it on the down low?
Because it's a mystery tradition. There are oaths that you take, and there are things that you have to keep secret. And people who don't know about the tradition are very curious about it. They want to find out more about it. Like, what do you guys do? What happens during an initiation? And you can't tell them, but they need to experience that for themselves, And so there's reasons for it. The secrecy, I think, was it started out really to protect the other members, protect yourselves. Like, I will never reveal the names of people who I know in the pagan community unless I have their permission. Their full name, tell that full name to anybody else, or maybe even their first name. Maybe they don't want other people to know their first name. That's to protect them. Mm-hmm. The other part is that it is a mystery tradition, and really it's finding out for yourself. And once you've experienced it for yourself, you personalize it. We don't have a priest who's up in the front who reads from the book and tells us what to believe. We have that book, we look at that book, we think about it, and we connect with the divine. We don't go through an intermediary. Even if they're a third degree or second degree, they're not the ones who are going to lead you to the god and the goddess. You are the one who's going to find the god and the goddess within yourself. And so you have that opportunity to do that. And if somebody reveals everything for you, it's kind of like it spoils the show.
So you would say it's very kind of focused on self-development too, then?
I think it is, yes, but I'm talking from my own personal perspective, because that's what I'm very much into. I'm very much into developing myself, looking at myself honestly. The great occult axiom is know thyself. And it's important to know ourselves, who we are, what we are, the dark parts of us, the personal parts of us, the our fears, all the various parts that make us up. These are elements of ourselves that we need to know. And so that is part of my path, definitely within Wicca. And for other people, maybe they're not really interested into finding out more about themselves. Maybe they want to explore, mythology or other stuff. So they may have more of a focus. I think, did I answer that question correctly?
Oh,
not
yeah.
correctly, but
Yeah.
okay. I kind of, while I was talking, I was like, wait a second, what the fuck did you just ask me?
No, you're good. You're
okay.
good.
Okay, good.
So what values or, virtues or within this path, is there a specific way that is encouraged for you to live your life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the two big ones I think everybody hears is, the rule of three, which is more of a guideline, a way of looking at life. It's not really a rule. It's not exactly it's going to come back to you 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there are some people who do believe that it comes back to you 3 times. But it's a way of understanding that what we give to the world, we're going to get back from the world. And whatever that is, like if I'm running around causing harm to people, it's probably going to come back to me. If I'm going out into the world and I'm like, trying to help out my brothers and sisters or my friends or whoever I know, however I can, it comes back to me. And it's not necessarily, I wouldn't call it karma. Some people call it karma. I don't really call it karma. It's just kind of its cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
The cause, the effect is you get hit in the face. The cause, well, you went up to somebody and hit them,
Right.
I mean, you're going to get what you give. And, if people in your community, you treat them fairly nicely and you don't bother people, you're probably going to be okay. But if you go around causing trouble and talking shit about people, you're going to get bit in your ass.
Yeah.
And then the other one is, and it harm none, do what you will. And that one is, it's pretty much just how to live your life. It's not really, I mean, you're free to do whatever you want in this world. But you don't want to cause harm to people, and that's if there was any real rule that I would want to follow, it's that one,
Yeah.
and it's part of acceptance. It's also part of tolerance. It's also part of understanding that, I kind of lost my train of thought, but I mean, it's very connected with the rule of 3 too, because it's kind of like you want to live your life in such a way that you're causing the least amount of harm. From a magical perspective, I look at it as throwing a stone into water. When you throw a stone into water, you see ripples that come out, and those ripples cause an effect. And so you can look at that as in the magical and the mundane world. These ripples that we send out have an effect. And so we want to cause change that is going to have the least amount of those ripples.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's certain things that you want to accomplish in your life, or maybe there's somebody in your life who you need to avoid or get rid of, or certain situations in your life, you can get rid of those with causing the least amount of ripples to happen. I always joke with my friends that, people who piss me off end up going on vacation. They're out of my life and there's nothing, they're not harmed or anything. They're off having fun, or maybe they get promoted in another city very far away from me.
Well, and I feel like too, like, I agree with you. I feel like the rule of 3 oftentimes, it's kind of controversial, right? Because some people are kind of throw that around like it applies to everyone.
Right.
Right. When it doesn't necessarily. if you don't walk specific paths that have it within it, it doesn't, I don't know. But I think that I totally agree. I see a lot of people who relate it to karma, and I feel like it's just not. I feel like it's more like this cause and effect that you were talking about.
Right.
Because karma and even dharma really have nothing to do with the rule of three, in my opinion.
Exactly. No, you're right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's another important thing. I think that, you know, I mean, let's be real. I mean, Wicca sort of has the corner market on a lot of pagan and witchcraft material, and also the way that people look at the pagan community. But everything that I believe, you probably don't believe. You probably have your own, obviously you have your own practice, your own beliefs, your own morals and everything. And it's the same thing with everybody in the community. So for me to expect that you have to follow some kind of rule of three, or and it harmed none, do as you will, or whatever. I mean, that's just not going to be accurate, because you have your own.
Yeah,
you know, everybody has their own thing. So I agree with you. And
I just see that rhetoric kind of thrown around a lot, especially in witchy forums or witchy groups. You know, someone uploads a working or talks about X, Y, or Z, and somewhere along the lines, there's someone who is trying to tell someone how to practice.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I watch a lot of videos, and a lot of videos I write a very long comment, very, very articulate, very, you know, well informed, and then I delete it because they're doing their thing. They're doing their thing, you know, and I just have to sit there and just bite my tongue and just say, they're doing their thing, you know.
Right.
And I'm not the pagan police. You know, a lot of us, we have to go through life. We have to stumble across. We have to stub our toe. We have to burn ourselves, and then we learn. You know, and so you have to allow people to do that. And you know, it's the best way for people to learn.
Now, let me ask you this.
Sure.
Because I just recently came across this. I admin a Facebook group primarily just for like local pagans and witches in my area. And someone shared an article that I read that was really interesting off air. I'll see if I can copy it from the, like, save it, copy it, link it to you. You can check it out. But this article is basically talking about, it was the first time I had ever actually seen this myself, and I thought it was really interesting. They were talking about how the rule of three, you know, like you point one finger and you have three fingers pointing back at you and all that. It was talking about how a witch should live her life or his life or their life, you know, by the rule of three. And depending on how someone treats you, you're supposed to treat them times three of that. Am I making sense? It was just interesting because I had never seen that perspective of a rule of three before. Basically, it was saying like as a witch, you know, with the rule of three, if someone does you good, then you do them better, kind of deal, or vice versa.
Right.
What do you think of that? Does that hold any root in British traditional witchcraft or Gardenarianism? Or is that just kind of a misappropriation of the rule of three, in your opinion?
I think that whoever wrote that, that's their perspective, and they're allowed that perspective. I think that I don't like rules. You know what I mean? I really, there's a Chinese proverb, which is, you know, the more rules you make, the more criminals you make. And so I think the best thing to do is to really not have moral rules in a particular system or particular belief. We're going to find our own moralities based upon our upbringing, our society, our culture, you know, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's interesting, but we also don't want to get into the mindset that you're doing something because somebody did something for you, and so you have to do it 3 times. If I'm doing something for somebody, I'm doing it for somebody. That's it. I'm not expecting to get 3 things back, or, you know, or anything, you know. There's obviously there's selfish nature for doing stuff for people because you get something back from it. you know. But I wouldn't want to look at it like, you know, like, okay, so they did something good for me, so I'm going to have to do, how am I going to return the favor 3 times? And, you know, you start getting into that. And I think that
Yeah, I
that's,
can see that being a little tiring too.
yeah, I mean, it's just, you know, I mean, like if I treat people like shit, chances are, you know, I'm going to lose friends. I'm going to, you know, people are not going to want to talk to me. You know, I'm going to suffer consequences for that. And that's kind of like how I look at the rule of 3. It's kind of, you know, that's just how I look at it, you know. But again, it's from the perspective of whoever understands it. Some people may think that it has to be 3, or maybe it's 12 or whatever, you know. And if that's their perspective on it, that's how they interpret it. My understanding is that it comes from Gerald Gardner's book, The Meaning of Witchcraft, and he based it upon King Pasal, who was saying, oh shoot, I don't know where it's at right now. I can't exactly remember the quote, but it was basically, no, I'm sorry, that was "And it harm none, do what you will." The other one was from the meaning Witchcraft Today by Gerald Gardner, and he was talking about as you give to other people, you'll get back 3 times. And there's actually an initiation ceremony in this book where I think it's 2nd degree, but the initiator gives 3 strikes with the scourge, and the initiate gives the person who gave 3, they give them like, I think 9 strokes or something, but they give them 3 times more. And 3 is it's very much part of a lot of mythologies, especially Celtic mythology.
Oh yeah.
You know, 3 is one of those numbers that just keeps coming up. And I think that that's why they called it the rule of 3. It was just a way of understanding that stuff does come back around to you. And, you know, it's going to come back 3 times. And, you know, it fit right in with the mythology. And I think it's just kind of evolved that way. You know, it's very easy for us to sort of take a snapshot of our tradition as the way it is. But actually, our tradition has been evolving since even before 1939. You know, depending upon what you believe about what happened in the New Forest Coven, if he actually was initiated by other witches, and he probably evolved even further back from that. You know, it's always an evolving and moving process. And, you know, we have our snapshot of it, and then we just kind of have to let it go. Next generation's going to interpret it. Next generation, et cetera, et cetera.
How would you describe to people, you know, if deity is a big part of this path, how would you describe to people the gods or goddesses or force or whatever within this specific tradition?
Well, Gardenarian has its own god and goddess. And, you know, so various covens, various groups, and even eclectic Wicca, they have their own god and goddess that appeals to them, that they look up to. And Wicca, they have a traditional god and goddess. So when I'm with a group and I'm in a coven, I'm recognizing those deities in that coven group. But on my own, because as you know, I'm an atheist. I don't believe in gods and goddesses, but I see God and goddess within other people. I see a god and goddess in everything, you know, but it's not like conscious deity outside of ourselves, but I definitely see it within each other, you know.
More like an archetype, would you say?
Sort of, but I mean, there's like in Thailand, in Buddhism, you'll see they put their hands together and they kind of like bow to you. And what they're doing is they're recognizing and giving reverence to the Buddha inside of you. And then you, in return, put your hands together and bow to them, and they're recognizing the Buddha inside of you. That's kind of how I perceive it. I perceive deity within each other. So I see the god and the goddess within each and every one of us. So that's how I perceive it. But again, if I'm talking about from the tradition of Gardenarian Wicca, they have their own god and goddess. And then there's some that even believe that there's like a unity of those two, and then it becomes sort of like a kind of almost like a trinity, but sort of like a monotheistic or a godhead form. But again, that's each individual is allowed to find that within themselves.
Would you say that like the horned god and the triple goddess are like relevant themes within British traditional witchcraft, or no, not at all?
I would say definitely yes. I think the horned god is definitely a part of it, and also the triple goddess is definitely a part of it. It's interesting, if you ever type in like Thyself in Google, I don't know how to spell that, but there was a triple-headed god. A lot of gods are seen as threes. Definitely the female deity was seen that because she sort of goes through 3 life phases. You know, women have automatically, they have their cycle, they bleed, and you know that's sort of their initiation, if you will, into womanhood. And then later on, they stop having that cycle, and then they sort of move into the crone period. Men have more of they do have that same sort of a trinity. You know, they develop, you know, semen. They start, you know, their voice changes. They go into adulthood, and then they get a little older, and they start losing interest in sex, and then they sort of like kind of go towards the
sage.
Yeah, sort of like a sage crone period. So they do have that triple aspect to it too, but for the most part, it's seen as a dual part. There's the green man and the horned god, and sometimes the oak and the holly king. So in Wicca, definitely there's the antlered horned god, and then the triple goddess.
Just kind of, and you feel like this is all over all sects of Wicca. So it really, I guess, would depend on what the group would be, whether it's between the oak and the holly king, or the horned god and the triple goddess. That you feel like it just kind of depends upon the group or coven.
Yes, it does. I mean, it definitely. You're probably going to see some sort of a horned figure. You're probably going to see some sort of a mother goddess, whether it be, for example, Pan and Gaia, or Cernunnos and Brigid, or it's going to be maybe, let's say, Loki and Freya. It's going to be typically some kind of a horned god and some kind of a female goddess. But yeah, it's left up to that group to decide who it is. But again, if it's British traditional Wicca, and especially Gardenarian, they have a god and a goddess figure. And when you find out about the group and you get initiated into it, those gods will be revealed to you.
I know that we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier too, but just to touch on it again, like, you know, talking about in these interviews, we talk about holy days or sacred days or days of practice. And, you know, I know we talked about the sabbats a little bit earlier too, but why don't we kind of get into that again and kind of talk maybe more about why British traditional witches see such sacredness in these particular days.
Okay. I think most people are familiar with the wheel of the year, but if you look at the wheel of the year, you usually see Samhain at the top and then Beltane at the bottom, and then this is sort of the fall and the winter half, and then the other side is like the lighter side, going from, you know, spring and summer. Is that right? Yeah. So it's those are usually considered to be the half. You know, you have the dark part of the year and the light part of the year. And when you have a meeting of light and dark is a time where the veil is supposed to be the thinnest, you know, like dusk, during the fog, uh, even at dawn. When there's the meeting between the two worlds, we definitely see that veil being very thin. So most people think about Samhain time being when the veil is the thinnest. But Beltane is also that time too, where the veil is supposed to be thinnest. This in traditional Irish, even Scottish, and a lot of European lore. So those are two, I would say those are two of the primary holidays. And then you also have Imbolc, which is halfway between Samhain and Beltane. And then on the other side, on the dark side, you have Lunasa, which is in between Beltane and Samhain. And then these were actually added to the traditional British Wicca holidays. I forget exactly when. I think maybe in the 1950s, between 1950 and 1960 maybe, where they added the equinoxes and the solstices. So, you know, you have December 21st, and then you have June 21st, and then March, usually March 21st, and September 21st, even though there's usually about 5 days for the equinoxes and the solstices, because depending upon when the sun is actually, you know, right overhead or
right.
Yeah, depending. So those we added, and then then later on, the 70s and 80s, maybe even in the late 80s, people started giving names to the equinoxes and solstices. So you have the summer solstice took on the name Litha. The December solstice took on the northern Germanic Yule time, the Yule name. Let me see. And then the March equinox took on the name of Mabon, which that was pretty much not really created, but influenced by a gentleman named Aidan Kelly, and a lot of people.
September.
Huh?
I thought
maybe in September. You could. You know what? I think you're right. I think you are right. Yes.
Because Mabon is my favorite.
Okay. All right. So you're right. So Mabon is September 21st. Yeah, you're right. So Ostara is what they usually call March 21st. Okay.
Yeah,
yes.
Ostara is the spring equinox.
You're right.
So those names came later then, is what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah, because originally, again, we're talking about British traditional Wicca. British traditional Wicca, they had the 4 cross days, which were called the high, you know, the greater solar, or excuse me, the greater fire days, or greater
fire festivals, maybe.
Yeah, greater fire festivals. Yeah, and then the 2 equinoxes and 2 solstices were called the lesser festivals, and those were added.
Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, it's okay. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, do you have a favorite?
Do I have a favorite? Oh yes, definitely. Samhain, definitely. I love the dark time. I love the fog. I love the rain. I love the rain when I'm indoors. When I'm outdoors, I don't love it that much, but that's the time that I enjoy the most.
I think Samhain for me is definitely one that's really close to my heart, because I practice it in more of the sense of like a Dia de los Muertos, like ancestor veneration.
Yep.
But I think that aesthetically, for me personally, I really like all the imagery around Mabon and fall and the equinox and balance and harmony, and it's Libra season and I'm a Mabon baby. So that probably has a lot to do with it. Plenty and abundance and apples and
yeah, definitely.
I'm ready for it.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean I like that too, and I also like Dia de Muertos is a good time. I think that's usually what, November 5th?
In November.
Yeah, it's in November. But I mean, it's interesting. I mean, the farther back you go in history, a lot of these holidays have crossovers, and so it's very easy to see that. I don't know Dia de Muertos if it really comes from Spanish, the European Spanish tradition, or if it comes from more of the South American.
More of South American.
Does it really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it would be interesting to find out if it's interesting, because I mean, definitely, maybe it's just that time of the year, that cultures recognize that, it's the dark time, and a lot of people, it's recognizing and understanding our own mortality.
Yeah.
Recognizing the ancestors that have passed before. So, but the further back you go in history, you find out that all these cultures, their celebrations begin to have overlap, because it all came from some one point, long time ago, some point.
So does this path have any figures or creatures or entities or beings that aren't necessarily gods, but that exist in the lore, so to speak?
Yes.
Like examples being like, giants are in some lore, fae folk are in some lore, elves, gnomes, things like that, sirens, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think, again, it's probably really open to interpretation of the group and also the individual. But I think the elements, definitely, the alchemical elements, a lot of people sort of personify those. They can see them as elemental spirits, elemental entities. I've known people, I've practiced in the past where we associated the elemental spirits with the she, the creatures of the she. And you could see them. Yeah, I would say they don't really, it's not like part of the lore. I think it's part that you can see it. You can see it in the lore. But I mean, I think it's really left up to the individual. But for myself, I definitely see the she. The she is really interesting. The she is what people would call the Norse or Northern Germanic elves, or the French fairies or fae people. The she is an Irish word for the people of the she, like the banshee, the female. And the she were actually ancestors. They were actually the ancient gods, and the ancient gods sort of got relegated down into the ground. They sort of took on their own world. The gods are immortal. They live in the hills. They lived underground. Their time is completely different from ours. They can create food. They can create anything they want. That's one of the reasons why, if you follow a rainbow, supposedly you'll find a pot of gold from a leprechaun. They can create anything they want. But the Irish she definitely are seen as ancestral, ancient deities. And that's what they are. And then over time, they've kind of been relegated to this sort of little fairy creature that hides in the woods. But they're the ancient gods.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would you say, in terms of magic, like what would separate British traditional magic from any other type of magic someone might be doing?
Well, I believe there's only one type of magic. There's one type of magic, but everybody accesses it differently. Again, that's just my interpretation. Other people may have different interpretations. They may consider this type of magic and that type of magic, and that's fine too, But for myself, the way that I see it is there's just one type of magic, but we all access it in a different way. But it's all one thing. It's maybe science one day will be able to figure out how to measure it or put it under a microscope or something. But it is that which people just access from a different point of view, but it's a natural part of the world. It's not supernatural. It's part of the natural world. It's just that there are some people who have the ability to access it, and some people maybe they don't exactly know how to access it.
I like that. I like that a lot, actually. That's a really good answer.
Okay, thanks. Woohoo! Do I get points?
Yeah, totally. I think that's pretty much, in short, most of my questions. What would you say, like, if you were going to give advice to someone who's just starting out on this path? You know, what advice in particular would you have to offer for them?
I would say know who you are. You know, do some time exploring just yourself. You know, I feel like it's like sometimes I read comments by people or people in Facebook groups, and it's kind of like they want something to kind of conform to them. And I think it's a very backwards way of looking at things. I think you should explore what motivates you, what excites you. What do you think about, you know, your ancestors, your path, or your culture, or, you know, what do you think about everything around you? And do some exploration within yourself first and find out what resonates with you. And whatever resonates with you, go towards that, you know, but don't try to get something to kind of conform to you, because that's not the way you want to do it. So that's what the advice I would say. And, you know, I think a lot of people, everybody says, read a book, read this, read that. Yeah, I think that that's important because you want to find out about stuff. But if you don't know what you're looking for, you're not going to find it, you know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Totally agree. Well, if there's anyone in the chat who has any questions about what we're talking about, feel free to post them in the chat and we'll try to answer them. I've really enjoyed having you on my channel so much.
Yes,
I've enjoyed it. It's been so fun.
Yes.
I've enjoyed learning more about British traditional witchcraft. It's been an absolute delight.
Well, I enjoyed it too. I mean, I'm very happy. Yeah, because I think when you told me you were going to be doing this, I think you told me about it, and I was excited about it. And so I contacted you, and I was like, "Hey, I want to be on your show." And you're like, "Oh, I was going to ask you."
Yeah, I was. So, I was planning on it because I was like, I've been actually sitting on this for about 2 weeks. I've been sitting on this whole project situation, just like wanting to kind of start doing, you know, interviewing people of specific traditions. And when I started thinking about British traditional witchcraft, you of course came to my mind immediately because we're friends online. I've been on your channel, we've hung out, we've talked, I feel comfortable with you, and I know that you're Gardenarian or British traditional Wiccan.
Gardenarian.
So I was totally gonna ask you, but you beat me to it.
Well, I was thinking that you and I probably were thinking in the same line. That's what I'm thinking, you know? And
so, we were just linked.
Yeah, exactly. But I notice your hand is better.
Yeah, I don't have the cast on anymore. I still have my fingers here all bandaged up.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, and I don't have nails, and it's so weird. It's so bizarre not having.
Why don't you have nails?
It's really stupid. The doctor's a complete asshat, and he was like made me take my nails off to get the surgery because he was like telling me that it's just like a health hazard and blah blah blah. But I've had surgeries in the past and not had to take my acrylic nails off, so I was a little irritated.
Whatever.
But the surgery took really well.
Maybe he was scared you were gonna like slice him, like he was gonna hit some nerve, and you go.
I don't know how well you can see.
I can see it. I can see that scar.
That's where they took a skin graft from.
Ouch. Oh, wow.
And then they put that like in between my two fingers here, and the skin graft took really, really well. But
Wow.
unfortunately, I had a minor complication. So I swell like really bad. Anytime I've ever had a procedure done or tattoos or piercings or anything, I swell like a balloon because I retain water.
Oh, wow.
So the cast, inside of the cast, there was dressing on my hand and it was just way too tight. So in between my fingers here where they did the skin graft, there was dressing, you know, in between here. And it was too tight. So it caused my skin on the sides of my fingers here to kind of atrophy a little bit. And then it got infected.
Oh, wow.
So I got on antibiotics and I have everything taken care of. The skin graft is really good. The infection is gone. And yeah, everything's healing up.
Good.
But because I still essentially have underneath these bandages in between the fingers, I just have two open holes still that are still healing. I'm still not doing hair.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good
So
idea.
I've just been doing my readings and I've been staying at home, and we just recently moved into our first house. So I've been having a lot of fun with like decorating that and buying stuff for that. So I've just been kind of being like a stay-at-home dog mom and like part-time psychic medium online.
Nice. You get to do a little bit of nesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been going on the whole month of August now. So I'm kind of ready to go back, but it's been nice to like nest and rest and just kick back and, you know, have fun and everything. But yeah, I'm very much a doer and I'm a busy bee and I always like to be doing something. So it's been really kind of a challenge just sitting and just being. And I think it's been really good for me.
Yeah. And your clients probably miss you.
Yeah, I mean, they've been inboxing me and stuff like, when are you coming back? Because, you know, I work at a barbershop. I primarily do men's hair, but I also work out of our house too. And I do, color and extensions and lashes and waxes, you know, all types of waxes, you know, lip, chin, bikini, Brazil, whatever, you know, I'll wax anything. So I do all that from home because we don't offer that at the shop.
Right.
And then I also do my readings, which are, I do in-house readings, and then I also do them online via Skype or Facebook Messenger or via email because not everyone's comfortable with face-to-face. So, yeah.
Well, I've done a Skype tarot reading with Loki's Witch, and I was kind of hesitant because anytime I've actually had a tarot reading done, it's been face-to-face. But she did a reading for me over Skype, and it was spot on, you know, and so I was impressed. So yeah, doing tarot readings via Skype really works.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely would depend on the person offering them and their style of reading. But I know that for me, one thing I like to do, because I prefer to do them in person, but that's just not always possible.
Yeah.
You know, I have clients who don't live close enough to make the drive. Or I have clients here in my local area who we just can't manage a time where it works out for both of us. So sometimes it does just need to be online, and some people prefer that. I kind of like the in-person because it's just so much more personal, but I don't mind doing it online.
Yeah.
But one thing I like to do to kind of create that energy exchange that I find important during a reading is I actually just incorporate numerology. So like if I'm using a 52 card deck, and let's say we're going to keep this real generic and real basic just for simplicity, but let's say we're doing a past, present, future card reading, I would have you pick 3 numbers between like 1 and 52. Since you can't really shuffle the deck, because if you were my client in person, I would have you shuffle my cards. But you can't really do that because you're online. So instead, you picking the numbers incorporates your own intention and your own energy into the reading instead of me just shuffling them. That's just how I do it though.
That's interesting. Because I don't do tarot readings for other people, but that's true because you do need them to shuffle them at least 3 times and then pick the cards. Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, let's see. Did we have any questions in the chat?
We had a lot of great, awesome comments. I don't really see any questions.
Okay.
A lot of people had commented that you looked great in a suit, though.
Oh, thank you.
You're always handsome.
Hey, I'm on Lady Ambrosia's channel. I gotta step up my game.
Oh man.
Can't be
I
running
just woke
around in
up
a
like
t-shirt.
this. I just woke up like this, so.
Oh yeah, of course you did.
But yeah, I mean, pretty much everyone just kind of was agreeing with what you were saying and said that you look good in a suit. And
Nobody's disagreeing with me. Damn it.
no, I'm not really seeing that. People are like, a wax and a reading sounds good to me.
Wax and a reading.
So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. But if you guys do think of any questions or you have any questions and you didn't get a chance to submit them, you can always go over to Lailoken's channel, Hellbound Heathen, and blow up his comment section on all of his videos.
Yes. And I'm actually really behind on videos, but I do want to start up like a very basic kind of, because I did my Wicca 2.0 series, but I want to kind of do like a more introductory video series on Wicca 101 if people are interested in that, and it would be centered on more of a traditional Wicca path, but it would not be Gardenarian focused, because again, Gardenarian, you really have to go out and find a teacher to really learn Gardenarian, and that's just the way it is. And I think it's actually better that way, because you get that face to face with somebody, and you really need that sometimes. Because I think a lot of we've kind of turned Wicca and even some other pagan traditions into sort of like this kind of cookie cutter sort of approach to things. It's kind of like, read this book, do this, do that, do that. And so it becomes very, very static. And I think having somebody who's an actual teacher who can tell you the history, the lore, and all this other stuff is really, really good to have. But unfortunately, not everybody has access to that, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so, I mean, I hope to have you back on my channel again at some point, of course.
Definitely.
But I appreciate you coming on here and kind of representing your, tradition and your path and everything. And it was a lot of fun. And I appreciate everyone in the chat too, hanging out with us.
Yes. Well, I had a lot of fun, Lady Ambrosia. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. And who is in the chat, by the way? Is it the usual suspects, or do we have some new people trolling around in there?
Well, there's the Mystical Cottage and Tarot, who is awesome.
Okay.
Mary Morning, the Geek Witch, Irish Pug, what the fuck?
Oh, yeah.
Arima Alice.
Okay.
Chad MC, Dark Star.
Okay. Irish Pug.
Random Witch. I don't know if she's still in here or not, but she was in here earlier.
Witch. Okay. I like her.
Caitlin. Yeah.
Caitlin. Okay. Oh, good. Good. Okay. Nice.
Well, we are going to sign off of here. It was fun. I appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate all the viewers, and I hope all of you guys have a great rest of your night, day, evening, wherever you're at in the solar race,
Wherever you are on the planet.
Yes. Bye, guys.
Night. Thank you so much.